Hey guys, Gabe Eltaeb here, Big Man Comics. I have an amazing guest today. I hope to do many more shows with him. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to dive into the magical world of animation with a true legend, Bill Frake. With 5 decades creating iconic stories at Disney, Warner Brothers, and Blue Sky, from the heart-pounding chases and Scrat, the touching and amazing Iron Giant, and one of my favorite, I just watched it last night, Roger Rabbit. Bill's genius has lit up screens with Oscar and in Oscar and Emmy-winning animation. Bill, I only messed up a little bit of that intro. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
How are you? How you doing, Gabe? Hey, man, it was nice to get together with you and have a nice chat, man. Your stuff is amazing.
Oh, I'm humbled that you would say that. You built my childhood. For the people are going to find out watching this, but you did build my childhood. You got into animation sometime in the 70s, and you were there until just recently. And I think you said you still do freelance stuff. Do you want to tell people a little bit just about who you are, what you've done, and what they may have heard of?
Yeah, most of I started my career many decades ago and worked with some of the best people that kind of trained me, and I was very happy to meet so many friends in the business. And now with there's so much stuff that is out there. How do you make quality films? It's really about the story, about the characters, and it's about what makes somebody get into a film and believe what's happening in front of them. It's how do you step into the dream? Right. Is what I'm always. So if I can create a dream and people can fall into it, that's my goal.
That's amazing. I've been a storyteller since I was a little kid. And was it the same for you? Because when I played toys, action figures with my brother, I was born in 78. So we're playing with our G.I. Joe and mostly Star Wars, man, 1981, 82, 83. It wasn't bang, bang. Oh, no, Darth Vader. It was like story arcs, character development, betrayals, evil twins. And, we're 3, 4, 5 years old with complex stories. And was it the same for you, your love of storytelling? When did it start? What were the first things you loved for storytelling?
It's looking at what I'm gonna say. When I first saw my first comic, I couldn't believe it. You know what it was it was yellow. I noticed everything was black and white all over the place because it was a period when I was a kid, and it was the newspapers, the magazines, everything was black and white. And then there was a stand off to the side that had the 4-color process. It was a yellow, green, red, blue, and it was the early Supermans, the early Spider-Man's, all that stuff. It was just like, what is this stuff? I mean, I couldn't believe it. And I was just so interested. And the color was what drove me first. Okay. And then I looked at the characters. And then my father grew up in the 30s, and comics were different then. He called it a rag mag. He said, what do you want with a rag mag? And I said, what's that? He said, it was like, kids don't read that stuff. And it was the beginning of when it was transformed from almost like adult comics to kids again. Okay. And so I looked at a lot of the superheroes and things that people were creating, and it was like they were creating so much interesting subject matter that everything was like Green Lantern, Flash. It was all about emotion and characters that could do things that you couldn't possibly do as a kid. They could transform things. They could see through walls. They could do. Right. And what it was is you started to copy that stuff. Yeah. You started to say, I could see through a wall. It sparked a kid's imagination that you all of a sudden were like, wow, there's this crowd out there that you believe they were real.
Right. So what year is this? And do you remember a specific cartoon? Because you told me you were born in 54. Right. I know that like Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, kept that Marvel age. That was about 61, 62.
61, 60, yeah. So when I first looked at this stuff, it was 1961. Space was really big.
Oh, so you were 7 years old.
Maybe 5, 6.
Oh, 5, 6, 7. You were right around there. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember a specific first book you saw?
It was the Joe Kubert, Sergeant Rock.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And what it was, I looked at the artwork and I'm like, only because it was Tomahawk, it was Sergeant Rock, because back then it was all the Western stuff was real big. Right. It was before Spider-Man. It was before Green Lantern. That was introduced a little later. And what it was is all of the people who were drawing these comics loved cowboy stuff as a kid. So they were drawing what they liked, right? So Joe Kubert was doing Tarzan, or not even Tarzan, it was Sergeant Rock, but that was after World War II. And my dad said he didn't want to, I don't want you to read about the war. And I said, no, I'm looking at the artwork. So he almost said, I don't want you to see this. He said, buy a Superman. And I said, but I don't want a Superman. I want to, it was the early part, right? I wanted a Sergeant Rock. He said, look, I'll get you the Superman. And he said, that was on my ship in D-Day. They painted it on the front of the ship, Superman.
Wow.
And he said, basically, he said that they had painted it on the ship, ready to go on D-Day, like Saving Private Ryan. And when he came, they basically said, you got to take that off, because if the Germans saw Superman on the ship and a spy said 800 soldiers are on that ship, sink Superman ship.
Right.
And so they had to overpaint it. And the guys were all upset because it had Superman with his arms out and he was flying in the sky with his cape on the front of the boat. Wow. And I thought it was huge, right? It was like a billboard in New York City or something. So, so he said, get the Superman. And it was a very, very interesting thing that I bought that, but I always wanted the Sergeant Rock because it was a different style. And it was more cinematography. It was all, it was almost getting closer to graphic novel, right?
Yeah,
it was
Joe Kubert, Will Eisner, are they like the two fathers of comics post World War II, right?
And I saw that as a quality. I'm like, for some reason, those are the guys I went right to. And the other stuff is great, but it was more like Sunday newspaper comics. You get a Sunday newspaper, you'd open up a newspaper, it'd be a full page of like 12 inches by 40 inches of comics, right? Whereas these little magazines you could read. But when I was in school, they wanted you to read the classics. And I kind of get bored with trying to read classics. I learned actually how to look at pictures and dialogue, and it actually helped me learn how to read as a kid.
Me too. You know, I hear a lot of comic book fans say that they learn big words written in a comic. You'll read a word, and then, you know, you're 7 and you're like, what does superfluous mean? And you go to the dictionary and it's superfluous. And, you know, it means extra, too much, redundant, whatever. So, yeah, I learned a bunch of words reading comics. I learned some Russian because of Colossus was the Russian X-Man. So, you know, Das Vidanya. And, you know, it's amazing what you learn reading comics.
Yeah, Das Vidanya Tuvalish means goodbye.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's good. The stuff you learned, and it was also Classic Illustrated. It was also like a short read of your classic books you had to read in school. So what was crazy, I would go down and pick one of those out if I had to read it in school, read the comic, and I could talk about it in class. And the teacher was like amazed that I knew so much about the classic book that I just read, which I had not.
I have found this. There's something about illustration that grumpy people resent. Most human beings love illustration. You look at a drawing, even ones you do yourself,
right?
And you're like, thank you, God, for this miracle of art. Thank you that we can create this. But there's a certain type of person that doesn't like it. I remember when I was in college, none of the professors liked that I was a comic writer and illustrator. They wanted me to do, you know, modern art and weird stuff. Is that post like the hippie love generation, postmodernism, or was that pervasive even when you were little in the 50s and 60s, that illustration it's low art, blah, blah, blah?
Yes. And it was like, what it was kind of like, what would you call it? It's kind of like they looked down upon you like you were just like a kid that didn't want to grow up, you know?
I think it's this. The most impressive art skill, in my opinion, is illustration.
Yes.
There's dance, there's sculpture, there's music. Illustration is the top. And I think there's a lot of frustrated failures of artists that really resent those of us that can draw. I think that's what it is.
Oh yeah. You know? Yeah. I've had things where top finance people who can't draw, and you look at a drawing that makes like one individual who's very famous can do one drawing. You get paid a huge amount of money for one drawing, and then you can have somebody from a college and do a drawing. And why is one more expensive than the other? Yeah. And so the bankers can't understand, why is there a financial difference? They don't see the art. They don't see it's like a famous paintings on the wall in the museums. You know, it's like, why is this so much? And it's kind of what I still think, the stuff that gets you into your dream state to relax. A comic is usually, a lot of people, you'll find a lot of famous people will love to read comics and don't tell anybody about it. They'll go back to a chair and read it and enjoy it to relax. And it's like a quick read of pictures and words. And once you get to know a character, you want to follow their story in every comic that's put out.
Yeah. No, yeah, I got bit by the comic book bug when I was 12 or 13. And, you know, I'd always loved comics and drawings. I didn't have any money when I was little, so I wouldn't buy them.
Yeah.
I was at my friend Sean's house. I was sitting in his room, and there was an issue of X-Men and an issue of Ghost Rider on the floor in his closet. And it was the comic book boom. I don't know if you're very aware of it. But like the housing boom, like the stock boom, there was a boom in the late 80s, early 90s. Comic book stores, comic books, they were just out of control sales.
Yeah.
And I was part of that wave. And many people in my age group who are professionals, that's what it was. It was Jim Lee's X-Men #1, Rob Liefeld's X-Force, Todd McFarlane's Spawn and Spider-Man. And I was 12 or 13, and it was just the perfect time. So you're 5, 6, 7. You see these amazing color comics in a black and white world. It's kind of like you put on the glasses in John Carpenter's They Live, you know, and it changed your life. When did animation come into? Because illustration is one thing, animation is a completely different art form.
Well, I used to, when I was a kid, I'd watch Walt Disney's Sunday night Wonderful World of Disney. My TV was black and white, right? So I went over to a neighbor's house, and they had a little bit. He was a vice president of CBS, and he had a color TV. It was probably like $2,000-3,000. It was a lot of money, right? But he got it from somebody in a studio that gave it to him. So I couldn't wait. I came over the first time I saw the color bursting out of Disney, and I couldn't believe it. But I did not even know where TV came from, where animation came from. You'd only see a Disney movie every 4 years because they would only release it. So if I wanted to watch Pinocchio, I'd see it when I was 5. Next time I'd see it, it'd be 10.
Right.
And then it'd be 14. 3 years, I can only see it 3 times. Well, what happened was I realized at that point, I just like to draw. You know, I just like to draw, do different things. It was when I was in college for fashion and illustration in New York City that I was doing these little cartoons and playing around. I brought the cartoons in as a little portfolio to show my teacher. And I did them when I was playing lacrosse in Montclair, New Jersey. And, you know, I was doing them with a team and stuff. And I brought them in, and that class, it was the last class of the entire career of being in school, like 12, 14 years. And this one guy came in who was an illustrator. His name was Roland Wilson, right? He came in and looked at this book I had. He said, "You're as good as anybody we work with." Now, I didn't even know anything about anything, cartoons. He said, "I want you to come up and see the studio where I'm working." He brought me up to Madison Avenue, and we looked at an animation studio, which did all the Jack Kirby stuff, the commercials and all that kind of stuff that we were showing, right? So it was only this chance meeting. And that's my whole career in life has been just like meeting you for the first time, a chance meeting, right?
Right. Well, I would say this, and you tell me, because you're older than me, you have more experience. I always tell people that luck is hard work meets opportunity. As long as you keep banging away and improving your skills, you can't control opportunities in life. They just kind of come and come and come. Yeah. But if you keep working, let's use football for an analogy. You're the backup quarterback. You can't control the starting quarterback got injured. You can only control that you're ready when he does.
Yes, ready.
And then they put you in the game. Can you play or not? You know what I mean?
That's it. So, you got to be ready. You got to be always tuned up. You got to get work on that resume. I mean, what I'm saying, your portfolio. Okay. Yeah. You got to always work on your skills. You see something, you learn it, you see it. And one of the best things that I learned was to work into a smaller studio where you had to do everything, right? Yeah. You cross-pollinate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The corporations want you to be incremental so they can cut you off.
Right. Right. One thing that I'm so happy about, and it was just the circumstance of my life and God's blessing, is I'm an award-winning writer. I can color like the best of them. I can illustrate. I can do the word balloons. I can make a comic book from idea to working with the printer and shipping it out. I can do everything. And a lot of people in my field, they can't. They can draw. Some of them can only draw in pencil. They can't do the finished ink. Some of the inkers can't really draw that well. Some of the colorists can't draw or ink. some of the letterers, like, so you're right. And then the big companies, they got you where they want you if you only have one skill set. So I would say, and you tell me again, you know, you're 20, 30 years older than me. Tell the audience, if they're a young artist, get all the skills.
Yes.
Get all the skills.
And go into illustration. I study illustration like you. Your love of illustration is the same thing to me. I look at like John Whitcomb. I look at J.C. Leyendecker. I look at all the people that illustrated, because they literally were able to tell a story in one picture.
Yeah.
They'd have like a whole 4 pages of writing about this one picture that they illustrated. So it was like a pre-production design drawing of a whole movie. You could do one painting of a movie and sell a movie instead of thousands, right? So how do you get really good with making everything work in one panel? And that's where in comics, it's the same thing. Everything is a one cell item, right?
Yeah.
It tells you this is what's happening. That's what, you know, and advances the story.
Yeah, you're distilling down the precise moment that is the most important information for the reader of what just happened and how it relates to the one before it and the one right after.
Yeah.
We've already gone like 20-something minutes. We said we were going to do 20 or 30, but we can't end here because people don't even know how you got into animation. So,
Right.
Bill, can we do 2 things? You give people the 5 or 10 minute, how did you get into animation? You said you met that Roland, what's his name, in New York. How'd you get into animation? And then maybe just a minute or 2, and we'll do it next. If we do another episode after this soon, I want to talk about Roger Rabbit. There might not be time today, but I was romantically involved with Jessica Rabbit when I was 10 or 11. Just so you know, the rumors are true.
Yeah.
But please tell people, how did you go from 5 years old, seeing Superman in 4 colors, you know, and then you see the wonderful world of Disney in color, and then you're at art fashion design school. So you're going to work with the madmen on Madison Avenue, designing, you know, clothing and advertising maybe. And then that guy tells you, you're as good as anyone over here at, what was the place? It was an animation studio, or what was it?
Well, it was a television commercial for animation. Okay. And what happened was, I wasn't qualified because there was a union. So what it was, I couldn't get in unless it was in the union. How do you get in? Well, you got to be in the union. I was like, well, how do you do this? Right.
Right.
So they said, you got to go off and get some experience, but they just told me I was good enough to be in. It had to do this weird thing. So I went away for about a year and worked on a couple little projects, and I came back showing them more work, right? On animation, I was just trying from different things. So I came back and they said, you know, something has just started in this town. It's very unusual. They're starting a feature film done by Richard Williams, who did Roger Rabbit. And it was called Raggedy Ann and Andy. And they're hiring all the old Disney artists from New York area. They're hiring all of the people one was Eric Goldberg, who did the genie in Aladdin. Tom Cito, who did directed and did animation and all this stuff.
Excuse me. What year is this Raggedy Ann and Andy?
77, 78.
Okay, 77. Okay.
Right. So I got in there, and basically we're working with Grim Natwick, who did Snow White. I'm working with Art Babbitt, who did the Mushrooms and Fantasia and stuff. All these old timers came out, and they'd come in from all over New York City area, the Society of Illustrators, all these people. You would meet all these people through these guys. And we worked for about 4 months, and then it was over. That was all it was. Okay. But it was my introduction into animation. I was learning how to paint backgrounds, how to do in-betweens, all this stuff. So then I basically, that was a pre-union shop that if you worked there, you could join the union.
Okay.
So I joined the union right there. Then I could go to the other place and got a full-time job.
Okay. All right. So that's how you broke in. 77, in the height of disco. You had a permed afro. You had a butterfly collar out to your shoulders.
Dance to Studio 54. You're pretty close.
You were a single guy in New York City with gold medallions and everything.
Oh man, it was Saturday Night Fever all the way. Yeah.
Oh, that's insane. I've never been to New York City. I might go soon someday, but I've never been.
You think LA is crowded?
I as a San Diegan, I proudly despise Los Angeles and pretty much everything about it. We don't that.
I got you. Well, you all like New York. There's so much to see.
Okay. I just want to see if the bagels are different because of the water, which is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Water is water is water.
They
Bagels
ship
are good.
water to LA to make New York pizza. You
That's
know
ridiculous. Water's like eight pounds a gallon. Do you know how much that would cost? Do you think they really do that? Because I've heard that, like you. I've heard, oh, they ship water from New York to LA to make pizza and bagels. That's an exorbitant cost. I always wondered if that was true.
I wonder if they take bottled water. You get paid for $1 or $2. You bring it with you on an airplane, and then you have your pie done. You give them the 2 bottles of water, and they make you pie.
I guess.
I don't know.
I don't know. We got a pizza place out here in San Diego.
Yeah.
Bronx Pizza. Today's show is brought to you by Bronx Pizza. No,
Wow.
not really. But it's some grouchy dudes from New York City, and it's the best pizza I've ever had. I go there, try to stay trim. I lost a lot of weight, but I go there once a month, maybe a little less. I love I love pizza. It's my favorite food. So, but okay, so that's how you got in. Do you want to keep going, or should we save more for later, or what do you feel? We've only gone 20 minutes here. Well, I want. Well, then tell us how it started. Then, so you go and work on Raggedy Ann and Andy, and then that gets you in the union, and then you go over to this television animation studio. What is the studio called? What are you guys making, and how do you feel there? How old are you?
Well, at that point, I'm about 23, right? So basically, the studio is called Phil Kimmelman and Associates. Okay. And they did the Raid commercials. They did the Jack Kirby commercials. They hired all the top comic book guys in Manhattan to work on designing the commercials they were working on. So what they would do is all these guys would come in with their artwork and lay it on the desk for me to look at to do what I was doing. So now I've got all this original comic art, and then people would bring in, comics weren't big then, right? They'd bring in all this stuff. Like one guy would bring a whole suitcase of Felix the Cat original artwork, Superman stuff, all this. And it was like, would you want this for $20, $50 or whatever?
Oh my gosh. Right? Tell me you have some Steranko, Kirby, Neil Adams originals. Tell me you have originals.
I can't. I'll make you embarrassed. But anyway, so
you missed that opportunity.
So no. And when you're making $200 a week, $20 is like,
you know what? And you're 23, 24, and you have no idea what they're gonna. That's true.
I don't know.
I don't have Amazon stock, and I could have bought some in '98. So,
but what it is all that stuff that you saw didn't have. You could get it tomorrow. You could get it the next day. It didn't matter. So why buy it now? Right.
Right.
When I was at Walt Disney in California, they had all the original artwork you look at, but it was just there. Who could care? Right? Because you can look at it tomorrow. But when somebody, all of a sudden, when it goes away, you realized how important that was. That's where like old timers and people that work in the business, as people fade away and disappear and don't even show up to the Comic Cons or anything, you've lost an opportunity like the original artwork to see them, not just talk about it, but maybe they can do a drawing and to see how their hands work. I've always learned if you can see how somebody's hand works, you can match what they're doing. Right?
Wow. Say that again, because I've never thought about that. Say that again.
Okay. When somebody does a drawing, study how they push their pencil, they pull their pencil, they slide their pencil, they scratch their pencil. Okay. And what they do is their hand is moving how they think. And what happens, that drawing is who they are and how they think. What happens is if you just look at a drawing, you have to reverse engineer all that. But if you're able to see somebody do their work, you can actually become that person by using their hand as a communication tool between you and,
you know, that makes so much sense. This is just like watching a quarterback or a pitcher or a basketball player. This is learning the form. Because a lot of people, and you tell me if this pisses you off too, because I don't say anything to people about it because they're not artists. How many people have you met that are not artists, Bill, over the years that just say you're talented, that you could always do this, no hard work involved? You started off as a Disney level animator when you were 2 years old. That's what non-artists, so many think. And they always say, they can't draw a stick figure. And I tell them, you could if you practiced.
That's every one of them. It's totally, you were nailed that one. That is totally
true. It's so annoying. It's insulting that we got this for free. Like, how dare you?
Well, I'm happy
to learn to do this.
I'm excited after 1 million drawings to get one good one.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got 3 good ones out of this whole day's work.
Yeah. No,
And
I'm drawing a cover for the Unstoppable Tyrus comic book
yeah,
that I've written, and it's almost done. And I'm drawing a new cover, and I'm having a great day drawing.
right.
Those great days where it's like
Oh
when
yeah,
Neo sees the Matrix in the Matrix movie.
yep.
Everything's working today. Then there's other days where you're just crumpling everything up and throwing it away, and you're using your eraser more than you're using your pencil tip.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what I do with that is I call that a bank account. Those
Yeah,
good days, I get up and I burn out all the day. I work so freaking hard until the end of the day. I get more than what I need. And I
right.
slide it off to the side like a bank account. And on the days that I need that bank account, I go back in. I can take the stuff that I staged and reblock it with other characters and
Yeah,
still keep the staging. It'll be perfect staging, but it'll be with different characters.
right.
So
That's
I'll be able
awesome.
to, yeah. So I constantly do staging drawings that I can use. I pull them up and I might have um, dynamic staging, different levels of cameras and stuff. And what I'll do is I just put it's all based on shapes, and then I'll put it in. Then I can just drop the characters into those shapes.
That's really smart. See, this is why I love talking to older, more experienced people about everything, not just my professional art, because why should I create everything from scratch? I just need to take your knowledge and then apply it to my life. And you did the same thing. You got
Exactly.
to work with some of the 9 old men.
Yeah.
Who are the 9 old men? And tell the audience what the significance, which is amazing, of who the 9 old men from Disney are.
Well, those are the guys that actually created all the films from Snow White all the way up. Disney had picked 9 guys to kind of manage all of the other animators and to do the best work. And one of the guys that was head of the training program was Eric Larson. He the last when I was there, Tim Burton was there, John Lasseter was there, um, uh, all the people that had started Mermaid. We were all kids, right? So what it was is Eric Larson had taught all these people. They had a school called Cal Arts they were doing, but all the people would come out of retirement and help the young artist. But there was one day when they were all gone, right?
Yeah,
Now, sometimes they would pop in and help you, but they would always be there. So when you work directly with them, may not work on the film, but they would come by and take a look at your drawing or help you or do things, and they mentored you. And that was
right.
something where you get a chance to meet Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnston, Ward Kimball, Eric Larson, a lot of them. Mark Davis, who did Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion,
Yeah. The
Uh,
Mark Davis, to me, he's my favorite for his design. The way he combines humor into everything is just outstanding.
oh man,
Such
and
playfulness in his work.
yeah, and that's what it was. I would go and reverse engineer whenever I'm working on something, and it applied itself to Iron Giant too. But what it was is I would go back in time in my thoughts and said, what were they looking at? Like, forget everything we know now, and it never exists. You go back to where they were if it was 1940s and look at the magazines,
Right.
look at the cars, look at the ads, look at the clothes, look at what the food they ate. Really immerse yourself in this method acting of who they were as individuals when they created that film 101 Dalmatians, or what was the Pinocchio thing? Was it politics? Was a war going on? Was it dark? Was it all, and that dictated an artist's emotion that when they did that film, that was why they did that film. And now you couldn't, because that whole emotional feeling didn't exist. So doesn't exist. So research back into the world that character lived into, and
Yeah.
and come out of that backwards, like reverse engineer it and come forward.
I'll tell you this. One thing I've noticed, I've only worked in comic books, basically. I did a little concept art for video games. I did a tiny, tiny bit of web animation for a special thing for the 24 television show like 20 years ago. But I've been in comic books 99%. Part of the culture of comic books now that I've been doing them for a quarter century is an arrogance of I did it all myself.
Yep.
No mentorship, no layouts from other artists. And they used to do layouts in the 80s and before, but something happened in comics. I couldn't tell you what, 90s and on. You do it all yourself. I don't. I have a veteran Disney animator, comic artist friend of mine, and he illustrates books from Big Man Comics. And then the books that I draw, he does layouts for me because he's better than me. And he's like 10, 15 years older than me. And he knows more. So he'll
Yeah.
draw the page loose and go, when you draw the Tyrus book, I think you should draw this for this page and draw this. And I give him credit in the book. I don't claim that I drew the whole thing. It's layouts, then finishes by me. But what I found in comics is there's a few guys, when I would color comic books for DC and Marvel, the best guys were the animators that had come from animation and started drawing comics. They understood the body language and the acting and the facial so much better than the comic book guys. But they were also very amenable to the mentorship concept that just makes sense to me. I don't need to start from zero. Yes, I want your layouts. Yes, I want your critique. I want all your secrets. I want to learn. Animation, it's only mentorship, right? The whole thing is built on mentorship. Comics are not. Tell me about that. What do you think of that in general?
Well, the person I learned from, like I mentioned it before, was born in the 1880s, right? He was a World War I soldier, right?
Jeez.
He taught me how to draw figure drawings good enough to go to Walt Disney Studios. And they asked me when I was 20, where did you learn how to do this? Almost like, have you done this all your life? They didn't quite ask that, but they were like, at your age, you shouldn't be able to do this, right? And I said, I learned from a guy from and they looked at me, but this guy was the guy I learned from, older than they were, right? And it was one of those things where the more that I learned from different, it's like you can live 1,000 years if you borrow 40 years from each person.
Wow. Wait a minute. That is a gem.
And that's where I'm at when I'm with my career. Every person that I learned from, whatever they had, and they were in their 80s, I feel like I took 80 years here, 90 here, 15 here from a kid that's 20. And you're adding it all up, and you realize if I did it myself, I only have 25 years. But by talking to these other people, I can increase my ability hundreds of years.
Amazing. Now,
because
let me ask you this.
They learn from other people. They may have learned 500 years worth of stuff.
Here's something I don't understand about Disney and exactly what you're talking about. I don't understand this. I've never known the answer. The 9 old men, masters of animation, animating in the 30s. Where did they learn to animate? Because animation kind of didn't exist really much before that, right? When did animation kind of start? Like in the 20s, right? So there's only like 10, 15 years before Snow White is made of animation.
Right.
How were they masterful animators if there wasn't a tradition of this? Where in the world did those guys come from, and who taught them, or did they make it up?
Well, it was funny when you take all you have to do. It's almost if you take 2 drawings and do 2 poses and you flip it sideways with your fingers and it comes alive, you realize you brought something inanimate into an animation, right? And these guys, you could take an old phone book and draw, which you can't get now, right? But take a phone book and draw little characters running on the bottom of the corner of the pages and turn it and flip it. And you can just play around with like 50 little panels. Doesn't matter what you do with them, just jumping back and forth. And you flip it, and you got a full thing of animation going in the corner of a. So you find these books in the library that have all these characters, like you can flip them,
right?
and stuff. But these guys came up with this stuff because they would go back to the Greek vases that we used in the movie Hercules and stuff. The Greek vases would animate
if you spun them, right?
Yeah, well, what is they have the different animated characters. If you turn them and rotate them, you'll see they didn't animate. If you did it fast enough, they would, but they animate the character moving into a story. He's telling the story through the vase. So the Greek soldier would be running to do something, and you see the run, right? So we go down to the Getty Museum and study stuff like that on Hercules. But basically, the guys in the beginning, it was like almost it was like magic, and everybody was like, this is crazy, how can we? And it started with Muybridge when you took pictures and started to analyze movement. That it really came down to when they went from flat film to 35 millimeter film with Thomas Edison, right? And Thomas Edison started to do animation, like how characters could pop on the screen and disappear. It was like kind of magic. So it was really like a game. And everybody was like playing these little like how can they amaze somebody with something like drawings, right? And then there's a lot of stuff for these people with just how can you just like well, what it was until computers. Eric Larson was saying animation is the only thing that you can create anything you want with out of nothing and draw what you think and move it, right? So everybody was in now in computers, that's a given, right? Virtual like VR effects and all that stuff. Basically, now they just do it. Back then, it was like that was the only way you could show like King Kong with Ray Harryhausen and stuff. The only way you could do it was through puppetry or things that you'd have to do stop frame animation to do this like combination Roger Rabbit magic of live action and animation combined.
I told you earlier, I watched Roger Rabbit last night. Hadn't seen it in years. Completely holds up. It's got to be one of my favorite movies. And
it's so
as
funny.
I told you earlier, I was involved with Jessica Rabbit at age 10 or 11. I was.
Well, it was like when I work at Lucas Ranch on that. I mean, it was something to me was we had they brought back all the old timers again to work on these characters. Not only we learned it, so we brought in the information. If the old timer was going, we learned something from them. We were able to put it into that film. And then if like Betty Boop on there, right. Grim Natwick came up with that. That's the first guy I worked with Richard Williams.
When I was in high school, I had a friend named Brian Giesler, and he said the person that invented Betty Boop was like his grandpa's uncle or something like that. So
yeah.
Was he out of like Wisconsin or somewhere up there?
Well, he was a logger, and he cut trees down, and he came down, and he was 40 years old at Walt Disney when they first started in Snow White. So he was the old guy where everybody else is in their 20s. So the 9 old men were 9 young kids.
Wow.
So, but he worked on the Roger Rabbit stuff. So he basically animated the Betty Boops and all this wonderful stuff that again, he came to my wedding, and he was 101, and even the 9 old men, a lot of them came, basically the ones that were alive, basically they said they couldn't believe that he showed up. He could where have you been, you know? And I find that wherever I go, I'll see people that I've learned and met in the past, animators, different, and you constantly it's like the history is in the individuals, and you don't know who you're talking to by their faces. It's by their work.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, I think that's a great intro to my fans here in Big Man Comics. They'll soon be your fans too. And it's just a very, very, very surface level overview of how you got into comic books and animation and a life as an artist. And I would love to keep doing this with you if you want to do it. Of course, I had lunch with you like a week and a half ago. We were there. I told my wife, listen, I don't know who this guy is. If it's just like we're there for an hour, I want to go, just take me to the table. We'll get out of here. You know, I was telling her that in the car. I was like, I don't know who this guy is. And then what were we there for like 3.5 hours, something like that?
Oh yeah, we were having so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, it's a delight. I consider you an old friend, and not just because you're old, but it feels like someone I've known since forever. I'm teasing.
No, it's true. I feel the same way with you, man. There's a spirit between both of us.
Well, I see it because like the philosophy you have of anyone can do this, you can learn what anyone's doing. I tell everyone that, and people are like, nope. Frank Frazetta is the only one who could ever do that. And it's like, okay, other people can learn to draw. Like, geez. So, but yeah, I think we're simpatico on a lot of our beliefs about life, and you know, obviously our faith. That's what we connected on that, and just what we believe about art and how important it is to make stories that lift people up, entertain them for sure, and inspire them. And just at the end of it all, the story's good for them and makes their life better.
Well, you spend half your life dreaming.
That's
you
true.
Go to sleep at night and you're dreaming.
That's true. That's true.
So why not spend the other half dreaming too? So dream the whole life.
Right. and these dreams, you're controlling them as we make them, these stories.
Exactly.
I'll do this as often as you'd like. I want to get into my love of Roger Rabbit, since you worked on that. Who was the guy? Was he Richard Williams?
Richard Williams.
And I've heard a lot of stuff about him, and that whole Thief and the Cobbler thing is just outstanding animation in that. And I'd love to delve into Roger Rabbit and more things, and more history of your rise from comic books, comic books at age 5 to getting into animation and all that. So I'd love to have you back. Thank you for being here, Bill. I really appreciate
I can't wait to be back and help you out, man. You got a great cause and a great thing you're doing.
Okay. Thank you. Now don't log out, Bill. I'm going to end the recording, but don't log out just yet.
You got it. Nope.